الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. So as we continue discussing the book بلوغ المرام من أدلة الأحكام by Hafiz Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani rahimahullah, and we're still discussing matters pertaining to Bab Nawaqil al-Wudu, so matters that the author rahimahullah mentioned regarding some ahadith pertaining to things that nullifies one wudu. So we'll be picking up from what we had left off regarding the hadith of Aisha, regarding what that pertains regarding of the things of wudu, and we'll be taking the hadith that follow the hadith of Anas bin Malik and other hadith still relating to the topic of Nawaqil al-Wudu. So we have the hadith read and we'll discuss the ahkam of this hadith. Tafaddal.
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad. Book of Purification, Chapter 6, the Nullification of Wudu. Hadith number 74. Narrated Anas ibn Malik radiallahu anhu, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam had blood extracted from his body and offered the prayer and did not perform a new ablution. Reported by Ad-Daraqutni, who graded it as layyin, weak.
So this is the hadith that has been mentioned here, as he mentioned, the hadith. So the normal system that we have the hadith read, then we'll discuss the hadith first regarding takhrij of the hadith, and then the ahkam that pertains to the hadith. So the hadith here that is mentioned, the hadith of Anas bin Malik, radiallahu anhu, where he mentioned, أن النبي عليه السلام احتجم وصلى ولم يتوضأ, that the Prophet عليه السلام, he performed at the hijama, performed upon him, and then he prayed, which is then he made the salat, and it mentioned walam yatawadda, and that he did not renew his wudu. So emphasis was hadith in mention of the ahkam that we'll be discussing, which is hijama, which is a form of blood cupping, so cupping of the blood, and also does this nullifies one wudu or not. So he mentioned akhrajahu, as for the hadith, that hadith is mentioned by Ad-Daraqutni, and he mentioned ولينه أن الدارقطني رحمه الله all the hadith to be lain. As for first takhrij of the hadith, so as for the hadith they mentioned here regarding concerning this hadith, أخرجه الدارقطني as stated here, and also the hadith is collected by al-Bayhaqi. So of those who have collected this hadith, we have الدارقطني mentioned by the author Ibn Hajar rahimahullah, but also al-Bayhaqi also have mentioned this particular hadith. So they mentioned regarding concerning that Ad-Daraqutni rahimahullah, that I've mentioned this hadith based upon the tariq of al-Bayhaqi, and also Bayhaqi, that he mentioned this hadith in his Sunan, and also he mentioned this hadith in his book Khilafiyat. So Bayhaqi rahimahullah, that he has several books that he have authored, and of those books he have a Sunan where he mentioned this hadith, and also second another book of his, which is the book that is called Khilafiyat. So he mentioned this hadith, and he mentioned the isnad, and he stated the hadith. Then as for what is mentioned regarding concerning that it is stated by Ibn Hajar rahimahullah that Ad-Daraqutni rahimahullah, all the hadith to be layyin. So layyin is a form of hadith being graded as something which is like it has a weakness, there is someone which is a level of acceptance. So hadith al-layn, there's a weakness in the hadith, but it's not where it is completely, the hadith is dismissed. So the hadith have some form of slight weakness in the hadith. But when the hadith is critiqued and the hadith is looked into, that the ulama rahimahullah have mentioned regarding concerning that as for this particular hadith, that they mentioned that it has certain type of default, the hadith, or it's an illah. So the word that is used ulama for this concerning illah, so the hadith have certain type of weaknesses or things that are criticized that will hamper the authenticity of the hadith. So they mentioned as for this hadith, that one of the criticism of this hadith, that they mentioned that Ibn Abdul Hadi, who was one of the ulama, the Hanabila, that he mentioned of the muhaddith of the Hanabila, they mentioned hadith Hanas, the hadith of Anas, la yuthbit, that the hadith of Anas, it is not authentic. Then they mentioned was Sulaiman ibn Dawood majhul, that Sulaiman ibn Dawood, one of the narrators, he said to be majhul, he is unknown. Also mentioned Saleh ibn Muqatil, a second narrator, who Saleh ibn Muqatil, he mentioned laysa biqawi, it is not someone who's qawi, is not someone who's strong. That dismissing the author. They mentioned قال له الدارقطني, and Daraqutni rahimahullah have mentioned those things. So Daraqutni, when he stated this hadith, then he mentioned those criticisms of hadith. Then I mentioned that, and also he said فقال له الدارقطني وحبوه غير معروف, and also it is stated that also that the father of Salih ibn Muqatil, that his father that he narrates upon also is mentioned to be غير معروف, is unknown. So the hadith overall, as mentioned by Az-Zayla'i, and also others, they mentioned that the hadith, it has certain weaknesses. Of those weaknesses, as identified by Daraqutni and others, one fihi Salih ibn Muqatil, who's not strong, his father Salih, who's غير معروف, who's not known, and also third Sulaiman ibn Dawood, who is majhul. So based upon those three criticisms of the isnad and those narrators, then the hadith is considered to be ضعيف. The hadith is considered to be ضعيف, as stated by Ibn Abdul Hadi and others. So that's concerning the hadith that is mentioned. So the hadith is considered to be hadith which is ضعيف, which is stated a hadith which is weak regarding those reasons as stated. That you find that something that is also that is stated by some of the ulama, and of those things that of those who have commented on this book, who is Sheikh Abdullah ibn Fawzan, Sheikh Abdullah Fawzan, that he stated that as for what is in the print of Sunan Ad-Daraqutni, so the actual print of Sunan Ad-Daraqutni that is in print, that Daraqutni rahimullah, that he criticized the hadith, but the criticism is not mentioned in the published text. So the published text of Sunan Ad-Daraqutni, where Daraqutni rahimullah, when he mentioned or stated this hadith, then he mentioned certain criticism of hadith that is missing from the printed text. So the Shaykh mentioned that either that the reason why that either concerned the reason concerned that information that is supposed to be there that is missing, then there was an error by way of the one who printed that book of Daraqutni, or did some work on the book of Sunan Daraqutni. So that is missing information that is not there. Then I mentioned second possibility, that is the ikhtilaf al-nusukh, that the different riwayah or the different manuscripts of Sunan Daraqutni, some have this information and others does not. So the ikhtilaf, a difference in the manuscript, where some have some information, where others may miss some that information. And or this information of Daraqutni, it is mentioned elsewhere. This information of Daraqutni, it is mentioned elsewhere. So those are the possibility. So concerning that, also those are the possibility that that the author have mentioned regarding those three possibilities. That information that is supposed to be there is actually missing in the printed work, or there's an ikhtilaf, a difference in the manuscript, where some may have this information and others does not have it. And the third, that this information that is mentioned by Daraqutni actually mentioned elsewhere in other of his books, mention others somewhere else. So overall, the ulama have mentioned of Zayla'i and others that An-Nawawi, that the hadith, it is weak. That the hadith is weak, and even Sheikh Abdullah Fawzan قال هذا حديث ضعيف جدا. That is hadith considered to be very weak. So the hadith, it have those ilal, those reasons why the hadith would be criticized. So that's the first matter regarding takhrij of the hadith in general, in brief. That hadith is found in the books of Daraqutni, Sunan Daraqutni, also Al-Bayhaqi in his Sunan, and also in his other book Khilafiyat by also Bayhaqi. The hadith is mentioned in those places. As for the hukum of the hadith, that we have stated that the ulama have highlighted that there's three weaknesses in the hadith, or three criticism, and we have mentioned regarding concerning those narrators, Sulaiman ibn Dawood, also Salih ibn Muqatil, and third, Abuhu as-Salih. So the next matter to be discussed regarding this particular hadith, the wording of the hadith, or what is meant by the hadith. They mentioned An-Nabi alayhi salam ihtajama, the Prophet Islam, that ijama was performed upon him, where is a form of blood being pulled or taken from the body. So hijama is blood being extracted or pulled, taken from the body, where the Prophet Islam would do so as a form of of hijama, is a form of way of the person that for health reason it is done, of pulling of blood from the body, and also for the form of a surgery. So it is done for health reasons regarding hijama. Then they mention regarding concern for Salah, the Prophet Islam, that this act of hijama where blood was taken from his body, was pulled from his body, and it mentioned was Salah, and the Prophet ﷺ that he prayed walam yatawadda, and he did not repeat his wudu. So lam yatawadda, kind of emphasizing that he prayed without performing of wudu, renewing of wudu, showing that hijama does not nullify one wudu, that hijama does not nullify one wudu. So overall, that the hadith is weak. But as for what can be taken from the hadith, so that's concerning the wording of the hadith and the meaning of the hadith. So they state that as for what can be extracted or taken from the hadith, as the ulama have mentioned regarding concerning that, to lay it out, that of the masahil, or the thing concerning that, as mentioned by Sheikh Al-Bassam in his explanation of Bulugh al-Maram, where he mentioned that anna al-hijama, that of the fawahid, or ma ya'khud min al-hadith, what can be taken from the hadith, he mentioned أول أن الحجامة, that hijama لا تنقل الوضوء, that hijama does not nullify, breaks one wudu. بل يجوز الصلاة بعدها, that rather that one can pray after performing hijama directly. So one can go directly to salat and pray after performing the act of hijama, which is of taking of blood from the body. So that's concerning the issue of this hadith. So that's concerning the mawdu of this particular hadith, is discussing the issue regarding a person blood being removed from one's body away, other than from the private parts, the private ear or the front or the back. Does this nullify one wudu? So that's concerning the mawdu, the topic of this particular hadith, and the discussion of this hadith. So from the hadith it shows regarding that taking or losing of blood other than from the private parts, the front or the back, that a person wudu is still intact, the person wudu is still valid, and the person can pray without performing of wudu. So that's the issue that is now to be discussed. So the masala now to be discussed between the ulama regarding the consequence or the ruling hukum al-hijama wal al-yanqul al-wudu amla. Does hijama, cupping, does it nullifies one wudu or not? On this matter, they mention regarding concern that now there's a khilaf between the ulama. So there's a discussion between the ulama on this particular matter. So they have mentioned regarding that on this matter that is I mentioned تنازع ulama, as mentioned by Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, قد تنازع العلماء, that is a difference between the ulama في خروج النجاسة من غير سبيلين, that a person losing or a person najasa coming forth from the person's body outside, away from the private area, from the front or the back. That I mentioned kal al-jur, that a person may have a blood wal fisad, where a person like blood splitting, or a hijama, or ru'af, or kay, and we have discussed some of these matters regarding that. And so the issue for us is hijama. So regarding or al-jur, the person may have a cut, losing of blood by way of a cut or by way of hijama. Does this nullifies one wudu? So they mentioned that as for this matter, that aqwal of the ulama, the position taken by the ulama, that the first position is madhab Imam Malik rahimahullah wa Imam Shafi. So the madhab of Imam Shafi wal Malik, that they are mentioned la yanqul al wudu, that the person that loses blood by way of hijama or a cut, that this does not nullifies one wudu. So the person's wudu is still intact. Then I mentioned لا ينقل الوضوء. The second opinion, madhab Imam Abu Hanifa wa Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, where they mention ينقل الوضوء, that hijama and having a cut, that this nullifies one wudu. So said that Imam Ahmad and Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah take the position that losing of blood, having a cut, or take having hijama, that this nullifies one wudu. Lakin Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, that he mentioned that إذا كان كثير, so he put kind of somewhat some restrictions on this matter, or he put certain type of guideline on this, where in cases where much blood have been lost, so the loss of blood should be in a large quantity for it to be considered to be nawaqil wudu, with Ahmad ibn Hanbal so showing that in small quantities it does not nullify one wudu. That I mentioned what adhar في جميع هذه أنواع, regarding concerning whether it is the loss of blood in any form outside of the private parts, by way of hijama, by way of a cut, by way of vomiting up blood, or with one's vomit, there's blood in it, that I mentioned that in all these circumstances and cases where it is in large amount or small amount, أنها لا ينقل الوضوء, it does not nullify one wudu. So loss of blood does not nullify one wudu. And we said with the exception of with the ulama, the loss of blood by way of blood being lost by way of the private areas, so the blood being gushing forth from the private area, or the loss of blood from the private parts, then that's not the discussion. It's outside, away from the private parts. So I mentioned that it does not nullify one wudu, ولكن يستحب الوضوء منها. But of the ulama that I mentioned, it is preferred. So there's a, it is allowed for a person to renew his wudu, but it is not wajib. It is not a must. And with ulama, Imam Shafi, or also Imam Malik, it does not nullify one wudu. If the person was to do so, then of the ulama, they mention labas. It is mustahab and it is okay. فَمَنْ صَلَّى, so the one who prays, وَلَمْ يَتَوَضَّى, from losing of blood, through a cut or through hijama, that the person, if he was to pray without renewing his wudu, that his wudu is sahih. His wudu is wudu, or his salat, it is valid. His salat is valid. So that's concerning of those. So that's concerning the aqwal of the ulama in this matter. So of the ulama who prefer that in that case for the person to renew his wudu, but of the ulama who mentioned he does not need to renew his wudu, but if he do so, then that is preferred. And some mention afdal, and some mention he does not have to. But as we mentioned, Abu Hanifa, or that in the person losing of blood nullifies one wudu. Ahmad rahimahullah take the same position, but only in cases where a lot of blood have been lost. A lot of blood have been lost. So that's concerning that matter regarding this hadith. So they mentioned, as for this hadith, that this hadith that it mentioned, that the hadith is weak, that as we mentioned, but the hadith is kind of somewhat, it goes back to the asl regarding concerning that a person wudu is intact until there's a clear evidence, convincing evidence that he has lost his wudu. So the person, so with this hadith, it goes back to the asl, which is concerned the asl, as they mentioned, al-muqarrar, that the asl that is established with the ulama, that adam al-not al-wudu, حتى وردت الدليل الثابت. So wudu is not lost until the person have a clear evidence that his wudu is broken by way of the Quran or by way of the Sunnah. So that hadith can somewhat reiterate that point. Then the next matter that is discussed with this hadith, that somewhat maybe have been covered before between the ulama, that they discuss regarding concerning that his blood considered to be najas or not najas. So is blood najas or not najas? And it's concerning blood outside dam and nifas wa dam al hayd. So this is the exclusion of the blood of menstrual blood and the blood of after child bleeding. That's the we are not that is a different discussion. So those are najas. But as for normal blood that the person may lose, is this considered to be najas? So the person have a cut, the blood from the person who may have a tooth bleeding, the person giving of blood, donating of blood, are these blood considered to be najas? So is blood considered to be najas? On this matter, regarding concerning blood, other than al-hayd wa nifas, that there's a khilaf between the ulama regarding is it impure or is it pure. So there's two qawl on this matter. So they mentioned that the qawl awwal annahu najas, that blood is impure. So blood is impure, yajib ghuslu, and also it is wajib, compulsory, that the person have to wash that area or wash it off. So yajib ghuslu, so that blood has to be washed. If it's on the person, it is to be removed, to be washed off, or on the person's clothing to be washed. And I mentioned وَيَعْفَى أَنْ يَسِيرُ أَنْ يَسِيرِ, and also the person is excused, and yasiri, that a person is excused for a small amount. So generally, so this view takes the position that blood is impure and is to be washed, to be removed, the person only is excused for a tiny amount. And that is the qawl of Jumhur of the ulama. So they mentioned that's the qawl of Jumhur of the ulama, to the extent, as mentioned by the ulama, some of the ulama, that it is an ijma. So of the ulama who have claimed that it is an ijma, that blood is said to be, or ruled to be, impure, najasa. Of those who say it is an ijma, who claim that it is an ijma, we have Ibn Hazm, Al-Zahiri, Ibn Abdul Barr, Ibn Rushd, An-Nawawi, Aini, Al-Hanafi, and others. So of those ulama that we have listed, that they have somewhat mentioned or state that blood is impure, and that is something agreed upon between the ulama. So to the extent we find that, so that's concerning that matter, to the extent that Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah in his book Sharh Umdah, where he mentioned قال أحمد بن حنبل رحمه الله إنه لم يختلف المسلمون في دم, that there is no difference regarding the difference between the ulama regarding blood, regarding concerning it being najas or not, we concern in relation to it being najas. So that's concerning that discussion. The second opinion on this matter take the position that blood it is pure, that blood it is pure, أنه طاهر أدا دم الحيض, with the exception of menstrual blood and nifas. And that's the position taken by Ash-Shawkani for the ulama mutaakhir, and also Sadiq Hasan Khan have followed that position. So Sadiq Hasan Khan also have taken that position, and Sadiq Hasan Khan rahimahullah, of those who have done other work around the books of Shawkani and San'ani, and have followed, especially concerning Shawkani, on many matters. So, and also of others of contemporary times that have taken this position, as Sheikh Muhammad Nasruddin Albani rahimahullah. So Sheikh Albani rahimahullah also of the opinion that blood it is pure, tahir. And also of contemporaries also that take this position, Sheikh Muhammad ibn Uthaymeen, Sheikh Muhammad ibn Salih al-Uthaymeen rahimahullah, also is of this position that blood it is tahir. So that's a discussion between the ulama on this matter, that of those who take this position, that they mention that there's no clear evidence stating that blood is impure. That is no clear evidence that states that blood is impure, except for blood and nifas and al-hayd, except for those ones. So it goes back to the asl, where those who claim it is impure, then they have to bring a dalil. Those who claim that it is impure, then for them to bring a dalil. And also you find cases where Sahaba, at some of the Sahaba rata'ala anhum, that were injured during their salat, and they'll continue to pray while blood was gushing from their body, while blood was running from their body, and they still continue in their salah. So that's concerning those matters. So you find that discussion, Allahu Alim, that Sheikh Abdullah Fawzan, he mentioned that al-qawl bi-tahara ad-dam lahu hadz min an-nazar. So his position that to Sheikh Abdullah ibn Fawzan, in his explanation, he mentioned wal-qawl bi-tahara ad-dam lahu hadz min an-nazar. That kind of somewhat indicate that this particular position, that it's a strong position. It's a strong position. So you have that discussion, as we mentioned, that discussion between the ulama regarding that is blood najas or not. We have mentioned the aqwal of the ulama on this matter. So that's concerning this hadith concerning al-anas that is mentioned, and also we discussed from the hadith to show that the permissibility regarding al-hijama. So from the hadith, even the hadith is ضعيف, but there's other supporting evidence to be discussed that it shows the permissibility of the performing of hijama, which is blood cupping. It shows the permissibility of this, and also that is used as a form of for health reasons, also as a way of to cure a certain type of illness. So that hijama is used for various benefits. That goes back to regarding a form of dawa, a form of like cure for a certain type of illness, to help a certain type of illness, and also a form of for health reason a person that may practice of hijama. So that inshallah ta'ala will end with this discussion regarding this particular hadith, regarding the ahkam that can be taken from this. Inshallah ta'ala will continue regarding, there's some other hadith that are discussed, and the hadith are somewhat all they're related to the same topic. So we try inshallah ta'ala to discuss about these hadith that somewhat relate to the same topic. So we'll have those hadith read and to be discussed.
Hadith number 75, narrated Muawiyah radiallahu anhu, Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, the eye, in brackets, when awake, is the tie string of the anus, in brackets, to stop air escaping. And if the two eyes sleep, the string is untied. Reported by Ahmad and At-Tabarani, who added, whoever sleeps must perform ablution. This additional word then is also reported by Abu Dawood in the Hadith of Ali. Without the words, the string is united. Both chains of narration contain ضعف, i.e. weakness. And Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu narrated in a marfu' hadith, i.e. attributed to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that ablution is necessary for one who sleeps while he is lying down flat. Reported by Abu Dawood, and there is ضعيف, weakness in its chain of narrators.
So that's a nice hadith. Those are the hadith that are also discussed regarding another of those discussion regarding, as the author, as those have explained this hadith that they mentioned regarding concerning an-nawm, madinatin, and not al-wudu, regarding again sleeping, does it nullifies one wudu. So the author, Ibn Hajar rahimahullah, that he mentioned the hadith of Muawiyah. So he mentioned this hadith of Muawiyah, where the hadith he mentioned anhu regarding concerning that qala alayhi salam, Rasul alayhi salam, al-ayn wika se. فإذا نام عين استلق وكاء أو وكاء رواه أحمد وطبراني وزاد ومن نام فليتوضأ. وهذه زيادة في هذا حديث عند أبي داود من حديث علي دون قوله استقلق وكاء وفي كلا إسندين ضعف. So he mentioned regarding concerning this hadith with the hadith of Muawiyah, that it mentioned regarding concerning that matters regarding that the eyes are the doors to the person's breakage of wudu. So discuss regarding concerning that the person that when he's awake, so the hadith meaning concerning that when a person is awake, then the person of control regarding passing of wind to some degree. But after the person, when he goes to sleep, then the person he loses control completely. So the person regarding concerning and is unaware that he may be passing of wind because of him being asleep. But when a person is awake, then he has more control. He may be able to more control the situation. So I mentioned this hadith and the different wording of the hadith. Then I mentioned overall regarding of the hadith that the main hadith al-ayn al-wika asih فإذا نام العين استلق وكاء رواه أحمد وطبراني. So he mentioned concerning this hadith by way of the takhrij of hadith, that he mentioned that this particular hadith that have been mentioned here, that hadith in the Ahmad wa Tabarani. So as for this particular hadith, that they have stated concerning this hadith that the isnad fihi da'f, that there's weakness in this hadith, and also this hadith it can be found in Ahmad in his Musnad, Abu Dawood, Ibn Majah, and also Tahawi in his book Shar al-Mushkil, Tabarani in his Musnad al-Shami'in. So Ahmad, so Tabarani have also narrated this particular hadith mentioned here, fi Musnad Shami'in. So that's concerning this particular hadith that have been mentioned here regarding concerning, and also of those Daraqutni, al-Bayhaqi, all of whom have mentioned this particular hadith. So many who have mentioned this particular hadith, he mentioned like two narration of hadith, narration of Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan, and the second narration of Ali ibn Abi Talib, the second narration of Ali, were of this same hadith. So as for what have been, so that as for the hadith that as mentioned by Ibn Hajar rahimahullah mentioned, وَفِي كِلَيْ إِسْنَادَيْنِ ضَعْف, that in both of the isnad of hadith that there is weakness, as you find that of the weakness in the hadith that have been mentioned here, that one of the weaknesses in the hadith afwan regarding concerning this hadith, so the takhrij of the hadith that we mentioned the hadith of Ali, so we mentioned concerning the takhrij of the hadith in the Abu Dawood, Ahmad, Ibn Majah, Uqayli, Tahawi, Tabarani fi Musnad al-Shah. That's concerning the narration of Ali ibn Abi Talib. That's the narration of Ali ibn Abi Talib. As for the narration of Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan, then that narration of this hadith is found in Ahmad in his Musnad, Darami in his Jami', Abu Ya'la, Tahawi fi Shar al-Mushkil, Tabarani fil Kabir. So Tabarani fil Kabir and others, Ad-Daraqutni and Bayhaqi. So the hadith of Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan, that hadith can be found in Ahmad. Also the hadith in the Tabarani in his Mu'jam al-Kabir, also Ad-Darami, Abu Ya'la in his Musnad, Tahawi in his book Shar al-Mushkil, al-Bayhaqi wa Ad-Daraqutni and others who have narrated the hadith of Muawiyah, and we have previously mentioned the takhrij of the hadith of Ali. So as for what can be said regarding concerning the criticism of this hadith, that they have mentioned regarding concerning that the hadith here, that of the criticism of this, they have mentioned hadith, as mentioned hadith fihi daf, that the hadith fihi ad-daf, as stated by Ibn Hajar rahimahullah ta'ala. And they mentioned the reason for the daf of the hadith. They mentioned fi isnad qala afid Baqiya ibn Walid Mudallis. So you have Baqiya ibn Walid al-Mudallis, that of the reason why the hadith is said to be weak, and his type of tadlis is considered to be the worst type of tadlis. So the worst type of tadlis, that where tadlis, so the ulama of hadith, that they mean concerning an yarwi rawi, where a person narrates ala man samya, upon a person that he heard from ma lam yasma minhu. So an yarwi an man samya minhu ma lam yasma minhu. So a tadlis is where a person he narrates a hadith from someone, his teacher, that from whom he have heard from, but in this particular hadith he did not hear it. So at times, so he have a sheikh that he have heard from, but at times he'll narrate hadith on his sheikh that he did not hear from his sheikh. And that's concerning, and you have other type of tadlis. So you have then tadlis got into different anwa, different type of tadlis, tadlis al-isnad. So overall, regarding concerning that tadlis, that he said to be of those regarding their tadlis, it is unacceptable. So Baqiya ibn Walid, his type of tadlis is unacceptable due to it falls into the more severe categories of tadlis. So for him to be accepted is you have some rules regarding for him to be accepted, and of that concerning, and to sarra bis-sama, that he has to clarify that he actually heard, use terms or sigha, wordings that indicate that he directly heard from his sheikh, which he did not fulfill. And also, another narrator mentioned Waddin ibn Ata Mutalifun fi, that also another of the narrator that is also spoken about, and also other criticism of the hadith, and also other criticism of this hadith. So both hadith are considered to be ضعيف. Where I mentioned that Ibn Adi also all the hadith to be ضعيف. So before Ibn Hajar, Ibn Abi Hatim, that Saltu Abi, that he mentioned Saltu Abu Hatim, and هذين حديثين, and both those two hadith, فقال ليس بقويتين, ليس بقويتين, that both hadith they are not considered to be strong, they are not considered to be strong hadith. وقد نقل ابن عبد الهادي وابن حجر العسقلاني عن إمام أحمد رحمه قال حديث علي أثبت من حديث معاوية, that Ahmed rahimahullah he mentioned that hadith Ali أثبت is more sound than that of the hadith of Muawiyah, even though both are ضعيف. The hadith of Ali also فيه إرسال, it is mursal. So the hadith of Ali also, it is mursal. It has a breakage in the isnad. So yeah, some critics overall they mentioned that أما تدليس البقية فقد صرح بالتحديد, that they mention also that in some narration that is found in Ahmad ibn Hanbal in his Musnad, where Baqiyya was criticized for his tadlis, that he did saraha bitahdith, that he used terms indicating the hadith directly from his teacher, but also is known for his tadlis, taswiyah. So also he has to, not only him but others have to use wording that they heard the hadith directly. So not just him, but also others in the isnad have to clarify they heard the hadith directly, or use those wordings, which they did not. So the hadith overall I mentioned, the hadith is ضعيف. Both those hadith are ضعيف. Even though we find that of contemporary, so that's concern of the ulama, of those that we find that Shaykh Albani rahimahullah, of contemporary, and also Shaykh Abdulaziz bin Baz, that Shaykh Albani rahimahullah, that he owed the hadith in Irwa al-Ghalil, that he owed the hadith to be Hasan. That Shaykh Albani owed the hadith to be Hasan, or the hadith to be, as I say, sound, hadith to be Hasan. And also Shaykh bin Baz rahimahullah قال إن هذين حديثين يشد بعضهما آخر, that both those two hadith, that they strengthen each other. So the Shaykh that and Shaykh Albani and Shaykh bin Baz, of their view that the hadith is somewhat acceptable based upon those two hadith with their weaknesses, that they strengthen each other. So I said no, that's a call, that their position on this particular hadith. So you find that there's a khilaf between what has been mentioned by the ulama of the past regarding their position regarding the hadith, and also what have been stated by the ulama of the ulama who came after them regarding these particular hadith. So you find a discussion between the ulama on these particular hadith. That they have mentioned also other regarding Ala Ibn Salah, wa Nawawi, and others who have somewhat all the hadith to be also Hasan. So a discussion between the ulama regarding, so this hadith will be of those hadith that requires further studies regarding what have been mentioned by the ulama, and that they divide into two camps. Those who are the hadith, both hadith to be ضعيف, weak, while others may give may all the hadith to be Hasan, based upon they strengthen each other. So you have that discussion between the ulama on these hadith. So as for what has been mentioned regarding concerning this particular hadith, is a discussion that we had before regarding concerning that, does sleep nullifies one wudu. So the hadith is discussing regarding that when the person is awake, that they have more control regarding their wika, which is their bottom. So the person have more control regarding their bottom, their anus, than so that's concerned. And when a person is asleep, then he has less control. He has less control. So the ulama discuss on this matter regarding, does sleeping, is it of those things that nullifies one wudu? So does sleep nullifies one wudu? And we have discussed regarding the ulama, you have different aqwal between the ulama. Of the more correct view of the ulama, or the view of the ulama, is that yes, it nullifies wudu. Of the ulama only does not nullifies wudu, but of those mentioned that make a distinction regarding the one who's in a deep sleep. So they make a distinction regarding the person who's in a deep sleep, where you have lost per se consciousness because of that deep sleep, then that person have lost his wudu. As for the person who's in a slumber, not per se or slight sleep, he still have some awareness, then that's a person, his wudu is still intact. So they make a distinction regarding the type of sleep. If it's a deep sleep, then a person have lost his wudu. And if the person is somewhat slumbering, nodding off in a slight sleep, then the person wudu is still intact. The person hasn't lost his wudu. So that's concerning that discussion regarding that topic regarding of sleeping. Does it nullify one wudu? So they mentioned al-wudu fi dhimmat al-naqt al-wudu. So it's a possibility that sleep is of those things that, depending on the type of sleep, could be classed as a nullifier wudu, and in some cases it does not. So that's concerning that discussion that was previously mentioned before. But the author rahimahullah mentioned some of the evidence used by those who may go this way of saying that it does not, and those who may say not, because the hadith that I mentioned here is ضعيف. So with that concern to us, so with this inshallah ta'ala, we have somewhat covered these matters that have been mentioned here. So in summary, that they mentioned here regarding, that as mentioned by Sheikh Al-Bassam, that with this discussion, and also Sheikh Bassam, he mentioned regarding concerning that with these, there's another hadith of Ibn Abbas, that also within the إنما على الوضوء على من نام مضطجعا. So there's another hadith of Ibn Abbas that also on that line. So we'll also add that to the third. There's the third hadith on that matter. See the hadith of Muawiyah, and just to speak about Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan as normally we do. So we have normally do this before. So as for Al-Muawiyah, so Muawiyah who's Abu Abdul Rahman, that's his kunya, Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan. As for Abu Sufyan, his father, Abu Sufyan, his father's name is Sakhar ibn Harb ibn Umayyah ibn Abd Shams ibn Abdul Manaf al-Qurashi al-Umawi. So the full name also be Muawiyah ibn Abu Sufyan ibn Harb, or Abu Sufyan, Sakhar, so Abu Sufyan will be Sakhar ibn Harb ibn Umayyah ibn Abd Shams ibn Abdul Manaf al-Qurashi al-Umawi. So we call concern the Umawi dynasty. It goes back to Muawiyah. So the Muawiyah dynasty that ruled for many years over the Muslim, that they go back to Muawiyah Abu Sufyan. So descendants of Muawiyah that they ruled for many years over the Muslim. So as for Muawiyah radiyallahu anhu, Sahabi Jalil, that mentioned that his birth was before Al-Ba'tha. So before the Prophet, before concerning the message of prophethood, that he was born a few, they mentioned Khamsa Sinin. So 5 years before the Prophet Islam messengership that he was born, he and his father, so Muawiyah and his father Abu Sufyan, both accepted Islam. So both accepted Islam, and I mentioned that of those who accept Islam of Al-Fat, of those who accept concerning of Al-Fat, Al-Mecca, the open of Mecca, or the conquest, or the Muslim taking control of Mecca, then they were accepted Islam during that period. Then they mentioned that he meant a difference. So you have another call regarding when they accepted Islam, that that regard that Muawiyah accepted Islam before his father. So after said around that the son accepted Islam before his father. Also of those things that are mentioned regarding Al-Muawiyah radiyallahu anhu, that he was of those concerning Katab al-Wahi. So of those who recorded revelation for the Prophet alayhi salam. So that's concerning of the duties that he did of those who recorded the revelation. Then eventually Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan, that was elected as the leader of the Muslim. So eventually of those who became the head of the state over the Muslim during a certain time. So he reigned over the Muslim for a period. Also Muawiyah, of those concerned, be a faqih, one of the ulama. So Muawiyah that on his leadership, that he established a leadership in Sham. So the leadership was placed, or said the capital was established in Hijaz, in Medina. Then when Muawiyah took leadership, then the capital, the Muslim, became in Asham, where he settled. And after him, that is son Yazid, that he also took leadership. So he took leadership, his son, by way of Istiklaf, that he was appointed to lead after his father, or his father nominated him to lead, to succeed after him. So that's concerning, as for Mata fi the month of Rajab, in Sana al-Sittin fi Damashq. So he died in the month of Rajab in the 60th year of the Hijrah in the city of Damascus. That's concerning the death of Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan ta'ala anhu. So that's concerning those of the Sahabi, or this particular Sahabi that has been mentioned for the first time, where in this particular hadith, so mention something regarding him in as to understand something in brief regarding the life of the Sahaba ta'ala anhum ajma'in. So that's concerning this particular hadith. Also regarding, I mentioned At-Tabarani, that he has several books in hadith, of those Al-Mu'jam Al-Kabir, wa Mu'jam Al-Awsat, wal Mu'jam Al-Sagir. And also he has other books, Musnad Ash-Shami'in. So At-Tabarani rahimullah, of the ulama who have many works in hadith that he has produced, and is of those that his name would be mentioned often in this particular collection. So that inshallah ta'ala, we have covered those matters regarding some of those matters regarding of those things that nullify wudu. He discussed here regarding hijama, and the personal loss of blood by way of a cut, or maybe by tooth extraction, or mouth bleed, or the person might have nosebleed. So these things, do they nullify one's wudu? Said khilaf between the ulama, but Allahu alam, that the more one the strong view is that it does not. Some of the ulama make a distinction regarding if it's in large quantities, it does. If in small quantity, it doesn't. But overall, that there's no clear hadith regarding losing of blood nullifies one wudu. So the person might have a prick, a small cut, and the likes. Then for sure this does not nullifies one wudu for a person. If a person choose to renew his wudu after a lasting of blood, then something which is mustahab with majority with the ulama. So this is something which is mustahab, something that is still allowed for a person to do if he was to lost or to have a cut or loss of blood. Is allowed to perform al-wudu, and that may be preferred with some of the ulama. So you have that discussion regarding that matter. Also we discuss the other matter of ad-dam. Does blood nullify, is blood considered to be najis or not? So make a the distinction regarding that blood, either blood that is from haid wal nifas, then that's a different type of blood, and that blood is considered to be najis. As for normal blood outside of haid wal nifas, is it considered to be najis or not? And we discussed the khilaf between ulama, those who say it is najis, and that's the qawl of jumhur of the ulama, but a fan of the ulama who say it is not najis, and they mention that there's no clear dalil stating that it is impure. So it goes back to the original ruling, which is to say something is impure, then one have to produce clear evidence. So that inshallah ta'ala we have covered the masahil of these hadith in the bab of nawaqil al-wudu, and inshallah ta'ala we'll continue discussing other of the hadith pertaining to this particular chapter that the author rahimahullah have mentioned. وبالله تعالى توفيق وهذه إلى السبيل وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله بالأمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.